Hello, and welcome to an episode of Flying High with Flutter. I'm your host, Alan Wyma. Today I'm with Trey Hope. Trey Hope is a YouTube content creator and software developer for Flutter. Hello, Trey. How are you?
I'm doing good, Alan, man. Appreciate you for having me. How are you doing?
Could be better. As we said this morning, morning for me, night for you. I was rushing to get over here because I didn't check my schedule in the morning. But I'm happy
Yeah.
you stuck around and didn't, not too angry at me. So that's good.
No, not at all, man. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so why don't we kind of go back to, I think it's always good to kind of hear about your background before we get into the meat of the topic, right? So you're a Flutter developer full time, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Now, were you always working on Flutter? Is this your first programming language, or kind of where'd you start getting into programming?
So I recently picked up Flutter probably like a year after its release. So I'd say somewhere in 2018, I picked up Flutter. But prior to that, I was doing native mobile app development, specifically on iOS. So I started working with like Swift, probably back in like 2014, 15 is when I made my first iOS application. So I was doing a lot of mobile app development just natively prior to. But before that, I really got started out with like web development. My first full-time job out of college, I was a web developer and I was working with Angular JS as the primary framework. So I kind of just been on a like front end type journey when it comes to the development technologies that I was working with. But ever since I picked up Flutter, I haven't really looked back. I haven't really touched any other frameworks unless I need to. Flutter just kind of been my main focus, my bread and butter. And now that Flutter is expanding to other platforms, I really don't see a need to really touch anything else unless I have to at this point also. So I've kind of been all over the board, but I've kind of figured out where I want to go now as far as the content that I'm making, and that's with Flutter.
So how did you first get introduced to Flutter to begin with?
I would think I was just like searching the web for just like different frameworks because I've always been very inquisitive when it comes to different programming languages or frameworks to work with. And I had already like made iOS applications and, had them on the market. I think I had a couple of them on the market, but I think I randomly just came across Flutter one day, like really random. I was never even looking for it, but I might have just been reading an article and something mentioned in that article that it is hybrid platform. So you can make your apps for iOS and Android simultaneously from one code base. And I remember reading that and I was like, well, this makes no sense to do native anymore if I can kill two birds with one stone. So that's really what kind of jump started my interest in Flutter. And from there, I just started working on Flutter and making apps. So it was really by chance. I figured I probably would have figured out Flutter later on anyways, just because it's a popular framework. But back then it was really just random that I was looking for new technologies to play with.
Now, did you ever take a look at technology like Ionic or these other kinds of similar multi-platform solutions?
No, I actually have not. I've heard of React Native, but I never picked it up. Isn't Xamarin hybrid? I don't know if Xamarin's hybrid or not.
Yeah, Xamarin's hybrid. Yeah.
Yeah, I heard of Xamarin. I used Xamarin one time for like a web application, but it was never for mobile application. So yeah, I honestly never really picked up any other framework. I think once I got my hands on Flutter, I figured this did everything that I needed to, and plus it integrated very well with Firebase, and that was already out of the box amazing. So I was kind of like, anything else, if it is better, it'll prove itself to me later on in life. But right now, I'm just going to stick with Flutter.
Okay, that's interesting. The reason I ask is because, yeah, those other platforms are also claimed to be kind of multiple platforms with one code base, right? Especially React Native.
Hmm.
And if you're coming from a web background, you may or may not. Well, you probably didn't touch React, right? So you never really took a look at React.js
One time.
one time.
Yeah.
One time was too much for you, or how was the experience?
No, no, no. I used it at my old job maybe like 2 years ago, and I really did like React. I like the idea of creating the components and how, kind of similar to like Angular. But I guess for me, since I had used Angular so long, I guess for me, I kind of have like a bias when I find a good framework that I almost don't want to touch anything else. So I was working with Angular JS and then Angular, of course, and I just never felt the need to touch React. So
Well, it's kind of interesting too because React is just what I would call just only like a view only framework, right? There's no, it's only for the viewing part. It's not about anything else as far as I've seen because you have to have your own state management, your own whatever.
Yeah, I've heard that as well.
This is one small piece of it, right? It cannot come by itself. But Angular is like a full fledged, like it's got everything, boxes, batteries included, as they call it, right?
Yep, everything. They call it a super framework. I remember that was their slogan back when I was working with it at my job. So yeah, Angular provides a lot more out of the box. It's been so long since I touched it, but I really loved when I was working with Angular.
Now, which Angular are you talking about? Angular 1, 2, or like 99 or 10,000, or which version of Angular are you talking about?
Angular JS when it first came out, and then after Angular JS, I think it was just called Angular, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that was Angular 1. But then after Angular 1, at that point, I wasn't really on web development anymore. So I kind of just put it to the side. So I wasn't even privy to all the other Angulars that came out after that first one.
Okay, and that's the one where you attach everything to the scope, right?
Yes. Yep. Yep. Like the model view controller type setup. Yeah. Man, it's been a minute since I touched that. Yeah.
Yeah, it was good when it first came out. I just wish that they could keep the same style because it was dead simple and super fast. But maybe it's not scalable. I'm guessing that's probably why they had to change everything around.
Yeah. That could be it.
Actually, it's kind of curious though. But when you're in web development, have you ever heard of Dart before?
Oh no. I never heard of Dart until Flutter. And I didn't know that, like, I guess Dart is actually a language that you can use to build web applications, but I didn't know that until I was already reading more about Dart because of Flutter. So yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's quite interesting because I think I've heard of Dart a while ago, and I was like, why the heck do we want to use Dart? Like, and then I saw that Google wanted to add it to their Chrome, and I was like, why the heck do we want to do that? We already got JavaScript. What else do you want to add to it? And
Yeah.
how are you going to do all this stuff? That was like my first thought. And you coming from Angular, they were pushing Angular with Dart for some time, and I think they dropped it and went to TypeScript because of TypeScript being so popular. And then they still had some version of Angular with Dart. I remember. Then they discontinued it publicly recently. So I was just curious about if you ever took a look at it because you were in Angular for some time at least.
That's actually pretty interesting to know. I might have stuck with Angular a little bit longer if I knew that they did that, because I really love Dart, the language itself. TypeScript's a great language too, but Dart is probably my favorite language. So I might have stuck with Angular just a little bit longer if I knew that.
Yeah, that I mean for me, like I'm kind of languaged out because every language says they're great, right? Nobody's gonna ever say we're a crap language, don't use us. So it's hard to
Yeah.
figure out, which one to take a look at, and you kind of get, like I said, language out, but then kind of check things out when people tell you to check them out. And I don't think anybody around me ever said take a look at Dart. The only thing I remember is like SASE CSS is being rewritten with Dart, and I thought that was really weird because I didn't understand why Dart because nobody else was using Dart at the time.
Yeah.
Okay, so yeah, sorry. And the reason I want to ask about the other frameworks is because, yeah, they promise one code base, multiple platforms, but then there's a trade off, right?
Hmm.
Have you ever played with an Ionic app before, or do you know what Ionic apps even look like?
No, I've never touched Ionic apps or played with Ionic.
Okay. What I mean by touch, like just downloading and using it, even because you can, at least for me, I can kind of tell when something's Ionic to a certain extent because it's just like a web view, something like that, like wrapped around a container. So you can tell it's a web page.
Is Ionic, if correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't Ionic build the app natively to the device? Like it's not like Flutter where it's the same app on both devices, but Ionic builds an Android app for Android device and an iOS app for iOS device. Like it compiles to their native devices. Is that right?
So what if anybody at home wants to come onto the podcast to talk about Ionic, I'm happy to hear that because I don't have extensive experience with it, but I've played around with it and I developed a little bit with it. The way I see Ionic is it's a web view or some type of browser with the JavaScript engine all in there, and it's very similar to. I guess you could say it like this: Imagine React Native. If you know how React Native kind of works, where there's actually a JavaScript engine underneath it, but replace the native components, which it does draw out, and replace it with a web page.
Okay.
So it's kind of like a windowless website, and yeah, there's some binding that you can call native calls and stuff, but
Yeah.
still, I mean, the thing that people really look at is always the UI. I mean, that's all you can look at. So if you can see and it looks like a crappy, website, then you're gonna feel it, and the experience is not gonna be so nice.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that's probably why I probably never touched Ionic. I've never really heard anyone speak about Ionic either. And any of the communities that I've been in when it comes to mobile app development, Ionic is never mentioned. It's usually just React Native, uh, Flutter, probably one other that I'm drawing a blank on, but I've never heard anyone say you got to check out Ionic.
Yeah, I don't think anybody ever told around me ever said check it out. I think they just said we use Ionic, and because they want that multi-platform support, and there was no Flutter at the time. They said I knew of. Yeah, and then also if you're using Node.js, then it just like makes more sense. They just say, oh, see, I can share the code between the front and back, etc., or one language, whatever.
Right.
Okay, so I'm guessing you downloaded Flutter, you played around with it, and how was the first time?
It was great actually because from the minute I downloaded it, the process of getting the first app up and running was so simple and easy. Because when you create your first Flutter app, it's the little example counter, click here and increase the count on the screen. Um, I thought that was so easy to set up because compared to like iOS, where you've got to go through a bunch of steps and configurations and connecting storyboards and buttons and pages, it was way more overhead to get an app started with iOS or Android. But with Flutter, I probably got it started within like 5 minutes. So my first experience with Flutter kind of exposed me to just how great this framework was because it made it feel as if I was almost playing with Legos when it came to development. It wasn't the learning curve was very, very smooth, and I think with Flutter, the reason it's so amazing is because it's simple enough that anyone can understand it, but complex enough to do a million and one things. So my very first experience from it, before I was even really making apps, I was just playing around with it. I was just making random screens, putting random buttons on there, just having fun with it. But it was a great experience as soon as I got started with it.
Yeah, well, the one of the things that I knew right away, or not knew, but I noticed right away was like I did do native Android and native iOS, and I never could figure out how to easily make custom components or even edit ones. So everything I had was just like the native, like the button looked like that. That was my button. Same for all, like the
Yeah,
typical you download an Android app that's made from a new developer on Android, and they all look exactly the same. The material UI, etc. Everybody has the top nav bar.
yeah, exactly, exactly.
It gets the job done, but they're not attractive, right? But then like with Flutter, like wow, I can make anything I wanted to make nearly. I don't think there's anything where I'm like, there's some things where I struggle with how to do it exactly, but I know it can be done.
Right.
Like that's the big difference for me.
Yeah, they really capitalize on the idea of creating your own widgets, and I think that's clearly what Android native iOS and Android was lacking at. But that's why I go that's why I go back to my previous point about it feels like I'm playing with Legos when I'm in Flutter because if I build, let's say, a boat in Legos, I can reuse that same boat to build a bigger ship later on and then use that ship to fit into, you know what I mean? Just I'm really piecing the puzzle together while I'm coding. And that made it feel as if it's very interactive and fun at the same time. So yeah, I really like the concept of the widgets and components that Flutter provides.
Yeah, they provide quite a bit out of the box, but there's always something lacking. And this kind of leads us into kind of the main topic today. We were talking before the show about foldables, right? So I said I've got, Samsung Fold.
Yep.
I think that there's a future in these. I don't know what the future is going to be. I'm afraid to say something and get wrong, but I think that there's definitely a target for this. And for me, I'm a target. I want to be able to put something in my pocket, use it, and then also if I need more real estate, I could just open it up some way, and I have that. Because there's so many times where like I find something funny, and I want to like show it to a friend, and I need to make it bigger because they're not as close as I am to the device. So it's nice to have an iPad, but nobody's gonna walk around the iPad. That's the iPad Mini.
Right.
But it depends on what you like, right? For me, I have an iPad Pro 12-inch at home that I watch YouTube and stuff on all the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, I got my phone. For work, I have a because I'm walking around different rooms all the time. I have an iPad Pro 11-inch, so it's kind of a compromise.
I'm right there with you, buddy.
Is that the 12-inch?
I think this is 13. I honestly, I don't even know the size. I forgot. I think it's 13. Do they come in 13?
I think it's 12.9 for the biggest one. That's the Pro, right?
Yeah. I got the Pro. I really just use it for like reading a lot. I don't even use it for anything else, but I just can't read off of my phone. I like to read off of the tablet.
Yeah, it's the same. I like to read it. I like to hold. Oh, I have a Kindle for that somewhere. I got a couple of Kindles, but I don't have so much time as I had before. I used to, always go from home to office very far. I forgot what the hell they call it now. My English is getting worse since I moved out here. Uh, the transit, right? I used to transit from very far
Hmm.
to go from office to work, and so I would have like an hour and a half, and I would just read. So in a month, I'd have a couple of books done. Worked out for me. But anyways, let's go back to the main topic. So I think the support was added in by Microsoft. Is that correct?
Yes. So the package that I came across, it was developed by Microsoft. I don't think that Flutter, like the actual, I don't think they have an official package made by them yet. And so I think Microsoft was just kind of trying to test the waters to see where it can go in the future. I think they did a good job based on what they provided so far. But I'm really interested to see how Flutter themselves tackles this concept.
I can imagine that probably because how do I say this? So Chris Sells, who I had some relationship before, his sole job is actually working with kind of corporates and trying to help them to adopt Flutter. So I can imagine that he probably spent some time with Microsoft and kind of walk them through how to add support because the Flutter team itself, who developing stuff, is super small. I think it's less than 20 people in total. I may be wrong.
Really? Less than 20 people?
So, and the amount of foldables out there is not big, right? Sorry, go ahead.
I would say less than 20 people, really, on the Flutter team?
I wouldn't be surprised if it's even less than 10, but that doesn't count the Dart team, right? The Dart team has to be at least 10, I would think. I don't know.
I guess it could be under 10 people because the fact that it's anyone can, support Flutter or make their own contributions. I guess that's how they get most of their help. Maybe it is only like 10, 20 people, but they're really cranking work out if it's that little amount of people. They're really, really working.
I mean, don't forget that so companies that are using it are also contributing back. And Flutter is not like a batteries built in system, right? It's not like you come from web development. I'm sure you've probably heard of Rails, right? Where it's like there's a Rails way to do it, and there's only one way to do it. And if you try to go against it, you're going to hurt yourself. No, you can do whatever you want, right? So they kind of keep it, like you said, Lego, where you kind of build your own stuff. So they keep the base pretty solid and up to the community to do what they want with it.
That makes sense.
And I mean, foldables is also like there's some foldable laptops, I think, but not uh, much else in terms of other kinds of devices. So for them to focus on foldables, especially so early, and I think it's pretty early in foldables because not that many companies are doing it, and the people who are buying them is very niche, right?
Yeah, I don't know too many people that are doing foldable right now either, but I'm starting to see a lot more commercials on it. So that's kind of why I wanted to do that video about foldable devices because even though I don't have one myself and I don't know anyone around me that has one, I'm starting to see the concept of foldable devices mentioned more so than I ever have before. Like I'm seeing, it just seemed like every other commercial, there's some type of Android foldable device that is being displayed. And so I'm like, that's interesting. There's probably going to be a huge surge of foldable devices within the next coming years. So I feel like you always, if you want to ride a wave, you got to get on the wave early. And so that's kind of what intrigued me to do that video about foldable devices. And maybe I'll even get one here soon. So we'll see.
If you got $2,000, I guess you can get one. They're about that price, I think, and maybe less than $2,000, but still way more than 1,000.
Yeah. We'll see. I don't know if I want to come back to Android. I do love Android. I just don't know if I want to come back to it so soon.
Yeah, I mean, I know what you mean, but it's also kind of for me. I like to change stuff once in a while, so it is kind of nice. But the problem is like the ability to switch between Android and iOS is not easy. I mean, some apps are available, some apps not. But then the other thing too is they don't make it easy to switch between the two to migrate.
Yeah.
So you really need to have like 2 SIM cards or whatever to really enjoy it.
They almost make you want to like second guess the idea of going back to a different device because of everything that would come with going back over that great wall. Like, do you really want to switch everything? Do you really want to step out of this ecosystem? If you're going from Apple to Android, do you really want to give up the Apple Watch syncing with your desktop or your iPad? And I was like, they really do a good job of making that wall huge enough to where you've really considered staying with a certain device forever.
Yes.
But I guess that's what big business is about.
I think I saw. Do you know this guy named? I think his nickname is Mr. Mobile. He does a lot of reviews about Android
Not
devices,
familiar.
etc. Okay, he does tech reviews for basically everything, like all kind of tech stuff. And he did a recent review on iPhone 14, and he basically said what a lot of people are saying, which is it's not a big upgrade from 13, but what you're getting out of it is you're stuck in the ecosystem, right? So you can see in my hand, I have my AirPod Pro 2.
Okay.
I got my Apple Watch. I got my iPhone. I got my iPad. I'm running on a Mac because I have to build for all platforms. And only Mac can do that
Yeah.
because you cannot build for iOS on
Yeah.
whatever. So I'm kind of stuck in the ecosystem. And so, yeah, once you're there, it's like, shit, everything kind of works. Like sometimes like I need to copy a link from my phone to my computer to open it. I could copy it and now it's on my clipboard on my Mac. It's awesome. Like I don't need to do anything.
Yeah. Exactly.
These little things make a big difference.
I'm team Apple all the way too. Everything Apple. So as soon as Apple makes a foldable device, we might have checked that out. We might actually go ahead and let go of the single one. Go ahead and get a foldable.
Yeah, definitely. I think once it comes there, because people know. I mean, Apple's kind of known as playing it safe or kind of putting together tech that makes sense. That's kind of proven, right?
Yeah.
So I guess
Yeah.
once Apple does it, then it means that this technology is solid, and they also see a future in it. They don't get everything right, though. Right? Let's be honest. They don't get everything right, but they tend to set trends, right? I think it's a little bit. Actually, does this phone even have? So this Fold this also does not have an audio jack. I haven't seen a phone with an audio jack in quite some time. It's a feature phone.
Yeah, they got rid of it. Thought that was one of the craziest things that I saw when it came to features that were removed from a new device. But it was just like once it was gone, you couldn't really complain anymore because it's just like it's just gone. Like, what can we really do as consumers, And their whole reason was, was it like saving memory or I don't even remember the reason. It was some legit reason that they, as Apple, provided as to getting rid of the audio jack. But I thought that was the biggest scam to just get more money. Of like, okay, now you have to buy a adapter to use audio jack, and it's just like, all right, come on. If you just want us to buy extra equipment, just say that.
Yeah, but the other thing too is I think things have gone Bluetooth way, right? Bluetooth has become better. Like I actually interned at Motorola when iPhone came out.
Mm-hmm.
So that was when the first iPhone came out a long time ago, right? And I remember back then Bluetooth was crap and it just sucked the battery out of your device. And also that small device did not last very long.
Yeah.
Now, I mean, your watch stays connected to your device all day. I don't think it causes big because there's now we have Bluetooth LE, low energy, right? Compared to then, there was no LE. So life has changed a lot, and yeah, and now that they have these cases that can charge it up for a couple of times, I mean, life is totally different.
Yeah.
I cannot imagine going back to a wire, right? Because also I don't know about you, but for me, sometimes I would put my hands around and I would knock out the wire, and my phone would go flying or rip out the earbuds out of my ears.
I definitely enjoy the simplicity of using Bluetooth at this point. I just felt like back then it was like such a sudden switch where it was just like, okay, I guess there's no jack now, And as consumers, we just had to eat it. But yeah, I use Bluetooth for my music, my watch. I'm using AirDrop when I need to share files between my iPad and my desktop. So I'm not mad at Bluetooth today. I don't want that to come off like I'm mad at it. I just think back then it was like a sudden switch that kind of caught us off guard.
And I think that there was companies like Samsung that were like, "Hey, we have an iPhone. We have a jack, right? Didn't that come out a couple times? I think
Uh,
that Samsung was like, our phones have jacks. Don't worry about it."
I don't know. I'm not familiar. It's been a while since I had Samsung.
I just remember the commercials and advertisements coming out, but Sorry, we keep getting thrown off another direction. Let's go back to the main
No, it's all
topic.
good. We're talking tech, man. It's all good. We're talking tech.
Okay, yeah. So you added the package in. Like, how did you actually learn how to use it? Because I did breeze through the video quite some time back, and I thought it was a little bit complicated. It wasn't so straightforward as some other widgets in Flutter are.
Hmm.
But I'm sure if I just sat there and looked at it and actually followed along, maybe it'd make more sense to me.
Yeah, I mean, I really just looked at the documentation on the website. I looked at a article on Microsoft's website as well, briefly talking about it. For me, it really wasn't too hard to understand. It was more so understanding the concept of when this widget would actually work. So I found out that um, it has to be like when I was using on an emulator, the foldable device, it has to be a foldable device that you're working with to actually see the functionality take place. If you're using that widget on just a normal screen, like a basic screen, none of those features work. So it's a little confusing there because you would think that this package should just kind of be null and void if you're not on a foldable device, but you can still work with it. Just none of the properties change when it's using a single screen. So um, once I got past that part of understanding that, okay, this is literally for foldable devices, even though it says that even though it can be worked with on any device, it is literally only for specific devices that have dual screens. Once I got past that, it was pretty easy to pick up, I think.
Now, this is a question that's in my mind right now. I think I'm aware that I think the Surface, the one done by Microsoft, is actually the Surface Duo 2, Surface Duo. That one is literally two screens, right?
Hmm.
But have you seen the Surface Duo 2?
I think so.
Yeah, that one literally has a hinge in the middle and it's two screens.
Yeah.
But what I have over here in my hand is a single screen that can fold. So is there actually a difference between the two in terms of how this library actually works?
So the library will work the exact same on both of those devices because on your device, it would recognize it as two screens. On the Surface Duo 2, even though it's one screen but folds into two, somehow the library is able to pick up that there are two different window panes that are on this device. I'm not sure how it does that. I'm not sure of all the magic that it does, but it somehow is able to know that, all right, there are two containers essentially that we're going to be working with when we're developing on this device. I think that the package states that it works for dual screen and foldable. So yours is technically dual screen, if I'm not mistaken. And the Duo that you just mentioned, I believe, is considered a foldable.
Okay, because what I see over here is the Dual actually has a hinge in the middle and it's two separate screens.
Right. It folds up though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So that would be considered the foldable. And yours is the dual screen. I know it's a little tricky, but they say that they provide for those type of devices, dual screen and foldable. So I know a lot of times when we hear dual screen, we automatically think that it has to be a certain type of device, but it really means dual screen and foldable devices. And those are different.
That makes sense. But now the question comes into, okay, so that part works. Are you familiar with the Flip from Samsung? And there's also a Motorola one too, the Razor.
Not really, no. I may have seen it one time, but I don't know much about it.
Okay, so imagine, you know the Fold I have, right? This one.
Yeah.
Now, imagine that the phone is always like this, but it clamshells, right? The top part will go down to the bottom part and folds in half.
Oh yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
there's a small screen on the outside.
Yeah.
I'm curious about if there's any support for something like that because I've seen those are really popular with girls, and I'm not too sure why.
I think because it's like the makeup for them. You know what I mean? They pop open their makeup. You know how they look in their mirrors with a little
Oh,
makeup.
yeah, it could be, yeah, because the outside screen and it has a camera, so maybe you can see yourself without opening it up. I don't know.
Yeah,
It could be.
that's probably why the ladies like it. But no, I've only seen that those are the devices I've seen commercials for. Actually, is the ones that fold vertically. But I don't know much about them. I probably should have demoed that package on a device like that, but um, I couldn't really find too many emulators when I was working on that video. I only could use that one emulator that I had in the video. I don't know if there's enough emulator support for foldable and dual screen devices out there already. So unless I already had a device myself, I was kind of out of luck in regards to finding a device to actually use as a simulator um, for my development.
That's true. I guess that's one of the things that's going to cause a problem is that it's hard to emulate that kind of device because not that many people are developing for them. And if they are, they probably actually went out and bought one because that's the only way to really do it.
Exactly. Yeah, I know that Microsoft, they provided an emulator, a foldable emulator, along with that package. You can download it on their website, but outside of Microsoft, I don't see where else you can get an emulator for that.
It's very interesting because I think everybody knows Samsung, and then they know some other brands, um, like Razer from Motorola also has this kind of style that, like you said, the vertical fold. But the I don't know anybody who has a Surface 2 Duo. I don't think anybody has a Microsoft phone nowadays. I don't know. Maybe have you heard of anybody? Do you know of anybody that has one?
Man, none of the people I hang around have ever had anything outside of iOS or Android. The closest thing that we had outside of those two platforms is maybe a BlackBerry, but this was back when I was in high school. But as far as a Microsoft phone or a Windows phone, like, nah, we don't do those over here.
Well, no, not even that. I'm talking about so the Microsoft ditched Windows quite a few years ago. Now they're using Android and they're still releasing phones.
Oh, really?
So the foldable support provided by Microsoft is actually an Android phone.
Oh, didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah, so that's why they released support because they have it's a phone called Surface 2 Duo with a hinge in the middle, literally two screens on each side. That's their kind of device of choice. I can
But it's an Android device, though.
yeah,
Okay. Interesting.
should be. I mean, I don't. I think they dropped it all. So in the chat, I'll send you a link to Amazon. Here's the device, and there's no outside screen actually, which is interesting. It's only like you can fold it out, so it's a two-way fold if that makes sense. You could fold it back and fold it closed. That's what it looks like to me.
Ah, okay,
And then this
okay.
one should be Android, as far as I know.
I wouldn't mind having one of these though.
I don't. It's not expensive. I mean, it's just a couple $100, I think.
Yeah. What is the size of? 5.8 inches. Okay. I would get one of these phones for like development purposes only. I probably wouldn't even really do anything on it, but just to have fun with working with uh, foldable development, I'd probably get a device like this.
Yeah, they look nice, and nobody's talking about them, which is interesting. Nobody's buying them, as far as I know. As far as I know, I would love to hear somebody if they bought one and what they think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, your video is pretty straightforward. I just need to sit down and just really look at it and play around with it because there's quite a few options, right? I think what was the options you have again? It's like for different situations you can choose what to show, right?
Yeah, there's the option to change the container width as far as the left pane and the right pane. So by default, it's 50/50, but you can modify that to be 30/70 or whatever it is. Yes, that's the option. One of the options. I'm really drawing a blank. I don't know if now that I think about it, I think that on dual screen devices, it's 50/50 always. I got to go back to the video. It's been a minute, but I know that you can change the left or right window pane with percentage. You can also change if you want the pane to be vertical, if you want it to be horizontal or vertical, and then you can also change the direction of the window pane. So if you want it to be pane A on top and pane B on bottom, or pane A on bottom and pane B on top. So those are three of the options that I know off the top of my head. There might be one more, but those are the three that I can remember.
Okay, it's pretty thorough. I don't think there's many other people putting videos out about foldables and how to work with them in Flutter. So that's why I thought your video was super interesting, and it's pretty recent too. I think, right? When did you release it? Like a couple months ago, I think.
Yeah, probably like 2 months ago. I was just looking through my YouTube videos, and I think that it said it was about 2 months ago, 2 or 3 months ago, not too long ago. And I really didn't see any other videos on foldable devices. There was a few articles about it, but I'm a visual learner. I like to see things kind of hands on and really in action to get an understanding of it. So once I got on YouTube and didn't see too many videos talking about it, I figured it'd be a more than opportune time to talk about this topic, and hopefully it can help someone else that's trying to learn about foldable devices.
Yeah, I had to share it with some people over here to see if they can play around with it because I got this phone to kind of learn about foldables, but I had just been sitting on my desk and I've been playing with it, but not really working on any apps with it.
Yeah.
I haven't checked out any of your other content. I'm sorry to say that, but I'll be direct. I haven't checked it out, but I can imagine it's probably pretty thorough and pretty decent content because based on the video I saw for foldables.
Yeah. Yeah. I try to tackle different topics about Flutter that usually I am interested in, one, but then two, that I don't think that a lot of people are speaking about just yet. So I'll do various topics on even different Flutter packages. I have like this sort of playlist where I just run through different Flutter packages that people would maybe need, but there isn't too much of an explanation of it on YouTube yet. Or I'll show someone how to set up their own API using Google Cloud Functions, something that is very vital, but outside of Google themselves, not too many people would be discussing it or demonstrating it. So my goal is always to kind of take these topics and bring them into a more realistic realm, because it's someone like me who's just an average developer like the other person, and discuss it in a manner that they can actually grasp and understand it a little bit better, versus them trying to understand super thorough documentation on Google's website. Because I know me, I get kind of overwhelmed when I'm trying to understand some of their technologies. And I'm just like, okay, I don't need to do A through Z. I just need A, B, C, And so that's really my goal, is to kind of take these harder topics and bring them to a more realistic and understandable level.
Oh, so you're basically digesting things and kind of, I want to say the word dumbing it down, but that doesn't make that's not what it is. It's kind
That's
of
exactly, that's
making,
exactly,
I mean, making the content easier for most people to understand, right?
yes, absolutely. And I always try to, if I can, keep the videos as short as possible too, because we could make long videos all day, but realistically, people don't really like watching videos that are too long, unless it's like a college student that has a paper on the topic or something. They're most likely going to want to watch a video that's under 10 minutes. So I may take a concept that would take maybe 30 minutes to set up or understand and try to condense it into 10 minutes if possible. And if I can do that, then I feel like I did my job as far as making this content more digestible for the average consumer.
Yeah, we only have a short attention span, and sometimes we're also in a rush too. It's like, I just want the answer. Like,
Exactly.
have you ever looked
Exactly.
at Python documentation before?
I think maybe once, a couple years ago, I was trying out for a Python position. I wasn't trying to get the position because I had already got a job somewhere else, but I was just trying to play around with Python. So I looked at it briefly. When they went to review my Python code, they were like, no, we're not hiring him. And rightfully so, because I wasn't doing a good job. But I was just like, I just want to play around with it. So I did look at it one time before, but not enough to recite it or actually regurgitate any of the information that I obtained.
Okay, a homework assignment for you if you're interested. You can go back and take a look at some Python docs, right? So for me, what I like to look at is I like to see, okay, here's the method name, and this is how to use it. Like an example is always great to have, or a couple is even better. And then a brief explanation about the arguments and everything else. And then, like, that's enough for me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I just want to get shit done. But when I look at Python docs, it's the only one that sticks in my head where you need to read a book about the whole thing. So they don't just, like, they talk about like theory or something. I'm not too sure what they talk about, but if you take a look at simple methods, they're at least a couple paragraphs long of just stuff. And I'm like, well, I just want to know how the heck to use this thing. I don't care about the theory, right? I know about this stuff. I just want to know how to use this stupid method so I can do what I need to do.
Yeah, that would be a turnout for me if I were ever going into Python seriously. I don't like extremely long documentation. I don't. I understand the purpose of it, but we're in a microwave age where we want things quick and easy. And when things look like it's going to take longer than what I needed to just to pick up the understanding of a method, I might just put it down and go to an easier framework like Flutter, but that's just me.
No, I don't think it's just you, because you and I are very much the same on this part. I just want to get shit done. I need to get this thing out the door. I know enough programming to understand about most of this stuff. If I really want to know more, then I'll Google search and I'll figure out what's going on.
Exactly.
I don't want to spend the time trying to understand the theory of a string. I know what the heck a string is. If I need to know more about strings in your thing, I'll look it up.
Yeah.
I don't want to do all this stuff. Just tell me what it is I want to do.
Exactly. Exactly.
Cool. I mean, I don't think I have anything else. I think check out your channel. I think it's called Trey Codes, right?
Yes, sir. Trey Codes, TreyCodes. I'm on YouTube. I'm on Instagram as well. Same name. I also, I'm on LinkedIn as well. I post my content there, but that you most likely are going to get the same content on those three platforms. So Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube, you can find every video that I got, and I post weekly. So I post every Friday, different topics. wide variety of whatever I'm talking about, but it's usually based around Flutter and Firebase. So yeah, just tune in, man. And I'll be sure to tune into your channel as well. I'm going to check it out after this. And I'll be sure to subscribe.
Awesome. Yeah, we had some pretty good guests from before. And I was just looking because you got your hair pulled back, and I was looking at your Instagram over here. You got some long dreads, man.
Thank you, man. 5 years in counting, man. 5 years.
I'm always quite curious about how dreads, how they work. I understand that if you, when I was told from a guy who did have dreads, if I remember, this is 20 years ago, when you put in dreads, you cannot wash your hair because it's just going to fall out or whatever. Something happens, something bad happens, right?
Nah, that's a myth. So you can definitely wash your hair, absolutely. But you're not supposed to wash it too often. I think it can cause like some breakage when it comes to the hair, I believe, if you wash it too much. So the goal, I personally try to wash it. See, I shouldn't even be saying this because there's going to be someone out there that's like, he only washes it every other week or what? But me personally, I may wash it like, if that, every other week, maybe 3 weeks, but I don't wash it too often because for one, I'm not really, I don't feel like I'm doing anything that's getting it super dirty. I wear, hair protector and everything like that. And then plus when I wash it, it can unravel the roots of the hair. And so I try to do that as well. So, but I try to get it retwisted every 6 weeks. So that is something that you should do if you ever want dreads. If you're ever interested in getting dreadlocks, you go ahead and know that you get retwisted every 6 weeks.
But it looks, I think it's painful, right? I know the cornrow stuff is super painful, like it pulls on your scalp, but is it also hurt to twist your hair too for dreads?
When I first started getting twisted, it hurt like hell. But I think that was just because the person I was going too hard on my head and I'm kind of tender headed. But at this point in my life, it just feels like someone's just playing in your hair and just pulling a little bit. It doesn't really hurt me anymore. But when it first started, yeah, it was someone just yanking your hair and just twisting it. It's like, yeah, it used to hurt.
Yeah, I don't even know because it's really specialty stuff. I don't know where to even go for something like that if I wanted to get that done. Plus, I don't think I would like to. I'm losing too much hair, so I don't know if I'd really want to go and try to grow. I'll be like some of these guys over here have, they grow half the head is very long, so they can comb it over. So that's maybe the only style I'll have. Maybe I can dread that part. I don't know.
Yeah, that might look good, man. If you get that, if you actually go with that style, let me know. I'd love to see it.
Yeah, if I do. I don't know if I really want to go and get every 6 weeks get hair maintenance, but I guess I'm doing that anyway. I think to be honest, I think every 6 weeks you probably need to get a haircut anyways if you're having short hair. Now that I think about it, so it's not too bad.
Maybe even sooner than 6 weeks. You might go. Or how often do
Maybe
you?
every month, a month and a half.
Yeah. You probably go sooner than 6 weeks. So it's probably about the same.
Okay, well, it's good to hear. So if people at home are interested in dreadlocks, you just got a 101 about dreadlocks.
Don't quote me, man. I do what I do with my hair, but I'm not the lock Bible, so you can do whatever you want.
Your hair, your choice. My body, my choice, right?
Exactly.
Cool. Again, thank you for your time, and I appreciate the knowledge about foldables and dreads. So now I feel much smarter.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alan, so much for having me on your show, man. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. Thank you for waiting for me.
Absolutely.